alert, an attack in Paris outside one of the most famous churches in all of Europe. Police investigating it as terrorism near the Notre Dame Cathedral. Here's what we know. A man went after a police officer with a hammer before that officer shot and wounded that man. Hundreds of visitors were locked down inside the cathedral. Tourists outside whisk away to safety. Covering this from London, Benjamin Hall. Benjamin?
Yeah, hi Harris. Look, another day, another attack here in Europe. We've seen far too many of them recently. What we know is that at around 4:40 in the afternoon in Paris, a man, as you say, armed with a hammer, began threatening passers-by and police in this very busy, iconic tourist location just outside Notre Dame Cathedral. It was only when he attacked a policeman, wounding him in the head, that other armed policemen opened fire. And we know that they shot him twice in the chest, and that attacker is still alive, though wounded, and he's been taken on to hospital. You know, we've seen these attacks happen again and again. It's a low-tech attack using nothing more than a household appliance. This, however, was aimed not at a soft target, but a very iconic target. And actually, the French Paris headquarters are just yards away from the entrance of Notre Dame. But, you know, this is Ramadan, and although it hasn't been confirmed that this was inspired by ISIS or directed by ISIS, it fits all the models. The police response, again, incredibly quick in this case. They immediately evacuated the square. They pushed those people who were near the cathedral back inside the cathedral. So very quickly, this iconic square, usually bustling with people, was empty, while hundreds of people were inside Notre Dame itself, told to put their hands in the air, wait calmly. But again, it's this police response time which was so impressive, and which is why this event is now, fortunately, over. France, and Paris in particular, has recently upped a lot of its armed forces in the area, especially around police major tourism spots like this. And so what we saw was the same way that they responded when the Louvre attack took place in February and when other attack outside Notre Dame was about to take place last September. So, you know, we are seeing multiple attempts like this, and of course on the back of the attacks in London and in Manchester recently, a reminder that this threat very much still out there. Back to you. Well, after what we just saw in London, which is where you're reporting from, Benjamin, I mean, people are getting the idea that that low tech may mean hand-to-hand combat if you're caught in that situation. I'm curious to know what the feeling is now in yet another city as we're seeing this, what the feeling is among the citizens, even where you are in London, about what they may be called to do. Well, there are two responses from the people. One is the political aspect. Are the police doing enough? Many of the attackers of a lot of the attacks we've seen were known to police. They were on watch lists. You know, you look at the London attacks recently, one of them was on a documentary for Channel 4 here, bragging almost about his, you know, his allegiance to ISIS. And so that's a political question. But on the ground, there is very much a sense that the people will move forward, that they will go on, they will not be affected by this. So you've got the two sides there. The questions being asked of politicians, is policing enough? Are the counter-terrorism services doing enough? But also a clear message to any terror groups, if indeed this attack was inspired by them, that they will not be cowed, that they will continue moving forward. All right, Benjamin, we remind everybody in Paris, they've been on the highest alert that nation has for a very long time now. We'll watch it, monitor it, and bring people news as it happens. Thank you.
Another Fox News alert in the wake of what officials are investigating as a terror attack in Paris and on the heels of the deadly London Bridge attack on Saturday. New questions about the president's travel ban and keeping Americans safe right here at home. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today, Harris Faulkner, Meghan McCain, former National Security Council staffer under Presidents George W. Bush and Obama, Jillian Turner, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy. The chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jason Chaffetz, is here, and he is outnumbered. And really good to have you, sir.
Thanks. Glad to be back. Appreciate it.
In a week that you've been in the headlines with pressing forward with so many different things on the Hill, it's good to have you here.
No, thanks. Glad to be here.
All right, a lot to get to. Let's get right to it. President Trump making a strong case for his travel ban of 6 mostly Muslim nations, especially in the wake of this latest incident in Paris and the London terror attack that left 7 people dead over the weekend. Last night, the president tweeting, quote, "That's right, we need a travel ban for certain dangerous countries, not some politically correct term that won't help us protect our people." This after a tweet criticizing his own Justice Department, saying it should have stayed with the original travel ban, not the watered-down politically correct version they submitted to SC. And our very own One Lucky Guy, who chairs the House Oversight Committee, is slamming the judicial branch, accusing equating it of keeping the Trump administration from protecting us right here at home. Explain where you're at with this, Mr.
Well,
Chairman.
look, the Congress has actually increased the funding, not only for Homeland Security, but for the Department of Defense. We have to understand that this nation, the number one thing we got to do is to protect our nation. We have done our job, and Congress has actually made sure that the president has the ability to do this.
Are his hands tied here?
Well, we have a few people, a handful of people in the judicial branch who are making, I think, ridiculous decisions. The president has the responsibility to protect our country. Now, I don't like it when the president uses the word ban. I didn't like it when anybody else used the word ban, because it's not a ban.
Right.
But to do this extreme vetting
again on Twitter, which is why
I know he's making
everyone's massively confused right now, because I was told by Sean Spicer, it's not a ban, it's not a ban. You're absurd for saying it's a ban. And then we have President Trump coming out and saying not only this is a ban, but we should have stuck with the original one and not hedged into politically correct malarkey and gone to this point. So there is validity that people are confused, and my understanding was the hang-up with the courts right now is from this word, and the rhetoric on the campaign trail seen it as anti-Muslim, going against religious liberties that are in this country. So is he undermining his own progress right now?
I do think, my guess is that the attorneys who are looking at this complicates it when the president uses in a tweet the word ban. It doesn't actually ban people, but it does make them go through extreme vetting, and I totally agree with that. Why should we go to places
for a finite amount of time? You know, if we're honest about what is included in the language, that's a ban for 90 days.
No, to make sure that look at Libya. Give me the case that says, in a country that has no formation of government, where our own embassy had to evacuate, we can't even have U.S. personnel there. Why should we let anybody in from that country until we've actually vetted them?
Okay, so Jillian, where are you at with this? This is your wheelhouse. After what we have seen happen in Paris and most recently in London, is there a growing appetite for something here to back up the president's point? Will he get more momentum behind this?
So I think that in order for a successful counterterrorism strategy, we need secure borders, and we need really airtight vetting and processing procedures for immigrants, for refugees, for anyone who's coming into the United States. I would argue number one, that we already have both of those things, this nation, and I would argue number two, that really from a policy perspective, to try and tie counterterrorism to immigration policy is a little bit of a false dichotomy. Much like the right likes to accuse the left of tying shootings at schools to gun violence and gun rights, I think that here when the right pushes back on the left and says, you're doing this, I see the point of view there. I don't think that we need to stop something that has been a core part of our nation's functioning for centuries in order to accommodate an increased terrorist threat. I think we can do both things.
The problem there is a total lack of faith, though, with the vetting right now. This extreme vetting that everyone's talking about. I'm sorry, no American is going to sit here with Manchester, London, and now Paris right now saying things are going great
But none
everywhere.
of those attacks, Megan, happened in the United States.
But
that happened in Europe, which has had a completely different immigration policy for decades than the United States.
Europe let a floodgate of refugees into exactly what's happening, and they're not assimilating. And Americans are sitting here. I'm sick of the left.
But we're not in danger of that happening here because we are doing a really good job.
Hold on. So one at a time. What we have heard, Harris, we listened yesterday to some Republicans who are already saying if there's another attack here at home, Democrats are to blame because they are stopping things like the travel ban.
So I just want to kind of add to what Jillian was saying and kind of separate what's happening there. Those countries that are on the list, it isn't that the origin, if you will, of the terrorism is coming from there. But if you look at Europe, what they're doing is they are going and getting radicalized in those countries that have defunct or absolutely zero governmental oversight. Look at Yemen. Look at some of the countries on that list. And so you go there, you get radicalized, you get maybe weaponized, you get your ideology on, if you will, and then you feather out through Europe because it's close, because it's borderless, because it's easy. But that doesn't mean that that same spirit of ideology isn't going to happen here. There may be fewer of them. The UK is hunting 23,000 of these terror suspects. The job is bigger over there because of what Megan was talking about, the open border.
Just to respond to Harris, the problem there, the disconnect comes from the idea that radical ideology, radical Islamic ideology, is something that comes from everywhere else in the world and is externally imposed.
No, but they are traveling from Minneapolis to go to Syria.
The United States
do know that. They're leaving to
Britain
go to
has
get what they
800
need.
people, 850 people now who have traveled to Iraq and Syria to train with ISIS and have returned to the UK.
But they do that here too.
But they're native Britons. Those are British citizens born and raised. So the idea
some of our own citizens
that this is a problem perpetrated by foreigners is not true.
The number one obligation we have are to Americans. I feel no compulsion to feel that I have to make sure that some Libyan can come to the United States. And for the liberals, it's a totally different paradigm. Remember, it was Barack Obama who was trying to loosen up the Ronald Reagan ban and making sure that Libyans could come to the United States to study nuclear sciences. They have no nuclear power plants, but Barack Obama wanted them to be able to do that, and aviation security. Why should we do that? We had to fight that back in Congress, but I feel no obligation to make sure that some Libyan, when we could do no vetting, and by the way, we can't have our own diplomats in Libya.
So you don't believe in refugees coming into the United
States?
I do,
but we have to vet them. That's the only thing the president...
I'm in 100% agreement.
But the president is saying, and we heard testimony from then FBI Director Comey and others saying, we have no ability to check records, background, check their schooling,
social media,
anything. I mean, we have had hearing after hearing begging the administration to check their social media, open social media, and they still are hesitant to do that.
But don't you think that then it's incumbent upon the executive branch and the Congress to come up with policies that adapt to...
But that's time, Jillian. That's time. That's a lot of time to sit around and not have...
That's what President Trump was hired to do. That's one of the core reasons that President Trump was elected.
But what he's done is put it, again, what he's done
is he's created a window for himself to be able to do that.
The process.
He's created a 90-day window.
In six countries.
None of which have perpetrated attacks on U.S.
You don't think Libya has perpetrated attacks
against
the...
In the United States, there's tell me about a Libyan terrorist who's executed a terrorist attack.
But you do know
how about against in Benghazi?
That's irrelevant. That has nothing
U.S.
to do
territory.
with...
Are you kidding me? There were 4 people that were killed.
Megan's going to jump back in here.
No, the problem right now is that in England you're seeing it with the mayor of London, and you're seeing it here as well. And I say this with the utmost respect for you, Jillian, because I know you've worked in national security. The idea that this is the new normal, which a lot of people on the left, Paul Krugman, are basically saying right now, is not something Americans are going to accept at all. I refuse to accept the London mayor saying that this is something that's normal, it's fine, London is the safest city globally. That is not something Americans are going to accept, whether or not we want to say things on television like there are a lot of extremist Muslims out there that don't adhere to the same ideology and the same religion that more normal, moderate Muslims adhere to. The idea that we're just going to sit back, this PC culture really has hit a fever pitch, and it's why you're seeing people react the way they are. I'm sick of being told that having a more extreme pause makes me somehow not compassionate to children refugees. That is a load. And I'm sorry, but sitting here, Americans do not want to see what's happening in Paris and London and England start happening here. And I'm sorry, they have let in a lot of refugees, a lot of people into their country. In Germany, as we've talked about many times, the sexual assaults against women were so bad that they ran out of pepper spray. So there is a correlation between letting people in and the rise that you're seeing right now.
All right, breaking news on that situation in Paris right now. The French Interior Minister is speaking, and here's what he is saying, and it's just wrapping up, I should say. So he's just walked away. He said that the attacker outside Notre Dame, who went after that police officer with a hammer, and that officer then wounded him, shooting him twice, was saying this. He was screaming something as he was outside that church. He said, "It's for Syria."
Oh, God.
So we break in with that news as we learn more details about this, and let's talk about this a little bit. So we've got this list, Congressman, of countries, and the point that I was making earlier is you don't necessarily have to be a refugee from that country in order to be inspired by the ideology that seems to be flowing like a wave across the planet. 30 countries the Islamic State savages are operating in and out of now. So it doesn't have to be the origin point, but it is a place that is inspiring. It is a place where people can travel to. They can come back to Belgium, some other European countries, borderless and travel freely. We want to make sure they're not coming from here. So it's not always a refugee situation. Maybe it's somebody coming from there after they become more inspired or radicalized.
One of the things we have to tackle are the asylum seekers. Of course, we're going to be a generous nation, but this country, in the United States, has no entry-exit program. I go down to my Subway shop and they can tell me how many times I've ordered the turkey sandwich. You can't tell how many people are leaving, exiting, and entering the country. And yet it is current U.S. law that that's supposed to be in place. It's been funded. And if we're going to learn anything from the Boston bombing, remember the Boston bombings? Yeah. We had somebody who here claimed asylum, then went back to that country.
Exactly.
And once they had done that, I've actually sponsored a bill. It's in the Judiciary Committee in the House. It says, if you come here, you claim asylum, you go back to your country of which you said you were going to be persecuted or killed, then guess what? You lose all those rights and privileges. But we have got to understand who's coming in and out of our country.
All right, a couple more details from the French Interior Minister who was just speaking. So, yes, he was screaming, "It's for Syria." He also had other weapons on him, apparently knives on him, and he acted alone. That's what the French police are saying that they believe at this point. Last we checked, he was wounded, shot twice in the chest, but is still alive. So, as we learn more, we'll report it.
All right, we will continue to bring you all the latest on that attack in Paris. Republicans about to face a big test, meanwhile, over repealing Obamacare. This as President Trump is set to huddle with GOP leaders today amid renewed efforts to push his agenda through Congress. So what can we expect?
Fox News Alert, more details coming in from Paris because the French Interior Minister just spoke moments ago, as we were telling you on Outnumbered before the commercial break, and we learned some details that we want to let you know. The man who was taken down by that police officer that he went after with a hammer, we understand that he's still alive. We don't know a condition on him. He was screaming, "It's for Syria," outside the Notre Dame church in Paris. He had, in addition to the hammer that he was trying to attack that police officer with, and other bystanders as well, so not just the officer, but others as well, outside the cathedral. He also had kitchen knives on him, and police believe he acted alone. So what's the significance of that? Remember, authorities have been telling us about the low-tech nature of some of these incidents, and they've been monitoring a situation and trying to see factually if it's connected to some of the social media threats of what you can do as a would-be terrorist during the time of Ramadan. So that low tech speaks to the number of these that we're seeing, and not necessarily the volume or the impact, the great impact. A lot to watch for. We're on it. We'll bring you the news as it happens. Megan?
President Trump is set to meet with Republican leaders today on health care. As a new battle looms in Congress, Republicans are facing a make-or-break moment over repealing and replacing Obamacare. Senate leaders are reportedly looking for a vote on health care before the July 4th recess to be able to then move on to tax reform. The president tweeting this morning, quote, "Big meeting today with Republican leadership concerning tax cuts and health care. We are all pushing hard, must get it right." Meantime, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell taking to the Senate floor this morning, saying the, quote, "Obamacare status quo is unsustainable and unacceptable," and calling on Senate Democrats to fix the broken system. But some Democrats a short time ago not mincing words on how they'll portray Republicans who repeal Obamacare. Watch.
It's going to result in higher premiums. It's going to result in pre-existing conditions not being covered. It's going to result in grandma and grandpa in nursing homes with Alzheimer's not getting the coverage for their nursing home beds. And by the way, I don't think the Republicans at the end of the day want to be seen as voting to kick grandma and grandpa out of nursing homes in our country.
Congressman, I'm going to start with you. We have to show in the Senate that we can get 50 out of 52 votes, or we're going to show America that we're too divided to make it happen.
Yeah, look, Republicans have two jobs. One is to repeal and replace Obamacare, and the other one is to engage in meaningful tax reform. So we've got to get it done. We did get it done in the House. It was close. It took a lot of effort to get there, but now it's up to the Senate. They've got to produce.
What do you foresee happening? Do you think the same problems from Congress, sort of with the Freedom Caucus and the more moderates having an ideological difference on what this bill should be? Do you see that happening again in the Senate?
Well, look, everybody wants to have their fingerprints on it. It is terribly complicated. We all want to get it right. But what we are united behind is the idea that Obamacare is imploding. I mean, look at Arizona, right? Premiums are up.
Worse, yeah.
Yeah, like more than 100%. And
116%,
yeah,
actually.
It's so. People are living it. People that are watching right now, they're living it. They know that we have the opportunity to change it, and we got to get that done.
The question remains, though, and I'm going to go to you, Harris, how bad of a loss will this be if we don't end up making it happen in the Senate? We were on this couch during the Rose Garden photo op when they passed through the Congress, and I said, I'm very superstitious. This photo op can come back to haunt you.
With the beer
yes,
and
out in the beer garden, that it was a big success. What do you think is going to happen?
You know, it's tricky because what you don't want to have is a situation where you don't actually make it better. And that's why you see Senators Rand Paul and Ted Cruz calling for, you got to repeal this, take this completely off the table and replace it with something. Yet they're trying to connect with those more moderate Democrats to try to get their idea about, well, we'll do repair with you. I don't know how sincere it is, but that's what they're saying. So today, Ted Cruz is looking at a situation where he and Senator Cornyn are writing legislation to do that across state lines, that competition, if you will. If those types of things can make it into a Senate bill, if they can agree on some of those things and actually make things better, it's great. If they can't do that, it's political dynamite, whether they get it done or they don't. Because if they make it worse, that doesn't get them anywhere.
So I'll defer my time to the congressman on the couch asking the same question Megan just did. If you don't get it right, if Republicans don't get this done, what is the political fallout?
Well, look, the situation's going to get worse and worse. At some point, it is going to happen. There is nothing magical that says it has to happen by July 4th, but it is frustrating as a Republican in Congress that we didn't have this all worked out last year. And so here we are in June, and now somebody's saying, hey,
You're
let's
asking the
write
question
something.
we're all wondering.
It baffles me. I really did support the earlier versions of it. It's not perfect. I wish I could have the perfect bill, but it is far, far better than Obamacare, which is destroying people's lives. And to see the Democrats, I have the greatest respect for Senator Markey, but come on, dude, Grandma and Grandpa, Alzheimer's, we're going to kick them off the... That is such sensationalism and is absolutely ridiculous, and not what the House bill does. It does drive down premiums. It does provide access to people with pre-existing conditions.
Is it coming?
I hope so. I want them to pass the bill that we passed out of the House. And if they have a better idea in the Senate, then coalesce and come together. Come on, we had 218 plus people who voted for our bill. You only have to get 50, so work it out.
What's the timetable politically?
Like yesterday.
But what if it doesn't pass out before the July 4th recess? Thank you.
Well, they had to the end of July.
Do you think, like, what happened? Is that this sort of nail in the coffin, or do you think it can go forward?
No, it has to go forward. And even if it were to come up for a vote and fail, they would still have to get it done, because as you go home over the August recess and you're having those town hall meetings, guess what? The situation gets worse and worse.
Well, the new enrollment period is in November.
The political capital you're giving to the left is paramount, because, as you were talking about with the senator, he is absolutely fear-mongering by bringing up Grandma and Grandpa, asking like that we somehow want old people to die.
Well, they better have some ideas, those Democrats.
But you've seen the frustration and amping up of town halls across the country. So fear-mongering has traditionally been effective, especially when it comes to health care. So if we blow this, the political capital that would have been gone at this point is, I don't believe, recoverable for midterm elections.
Democrats have to have some ideas. They have to. They've got to come to the table with some ideas, because you can't just let this explode, implode, whatever the word is that you want to use, tearing down one side. There are millions of people caught in the middle.
That's where the Democrats ultimately fail. They scare people, but they have no solution. They have no ideas. They have no... That's why I think they lost so handily in the last election. From the presidential level down, they did not actually have solutions.
All right, we got to move on. The White House saying the president won't stop ex-FBI Director James Comey's Senate testimony on Thursday. What can we expect when Comey finally breaks his silence?
Former FBI director, who was fired, James Comey, is scheduled to testify on Capitol Hill Thursday, nearly 1 month after President Trump fired him. And we are now learning President Trump will not try to stop him with executive privilege. Watch.
The president's power to exert executive privilege is very well established. However, in order to facilitate a swift and thorough examination of the facts sought by the Senate Intelligence Committee, President Trump will not assert executive privilege regarding James Comey's scheduled testimony.
Lawmakers say they want to know more about Comey's dismissal and his conversations with President Trump, but it's not clear how much he'll actually be able to say, because, you know, part of it is in public, part of it is private. The Senate Intelligence Chair now asking to meet with Robert Mueller, special counsel for the Russia investigation, to talk about what is in bounds and what is out of bounds at that hearing. Also, Judge Andrew Napolitano here at Fox says he does not expect Comey's testimony to contain any bombshells.
The last thing a prosecutor wants is a potential star witness in another environment under oath testifying where the prosecutor's not there. So that tells me that Bob Mueller knows what Jim Comey is going to say and has approved what Jim Comey is going to say, meaning whatever he says is not going to jeopardize any of the investigations that Mueller is running.
So there's a song playing, and even the Democrats are singing along. I think Senator Warner said it yesterday. There's no evidence. There's no smoking gun. So this is what? This is just like a dance that everybody's going to go, and it's a party? Like, why even do this?
Well, first thing is Donald Trump did, I think, do the right thing in not invoking executive privilege. And remember, Barack Obama, as president, he invoked executive privilege. He wouldn't allow Ben Rhodes to come testify before our committee. They inhibited our ability to look into Fast and Furious and prohibit the Attorney General from providing all this information. But number two, nobody has seen the documents. You know, the New York Times started this story.
The memos.
The so-called memos. And people keep saying they're out there, but when I asked Director Comey on a telephone conversation, where are these documents? Do you have them personally, or are they at the Department of Justice? He said, I will not answer that. So it really is a question, and how are you going to question him about a memo when you haven't even seen the memo?
I mean, it's not like he's going to take it out of his jacket, right, and say, oh, I'm producing the memos now.
I don't know.
So these were memos, Sandra, that we know that he wrote to himself in those moments that he says that the president was asking him not to investigate further his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn.
So what would be the most important question asked of the former FBI director?
Well, I want to know where those documents are. I also, by the way, the Oversight Committee, which I'm chairing right now, we want to see the other memos that he might. Well, not yet, but we have the option to do that at any time. We have asked for the other documents. If Mr. Comey had regularly done this, what about Loretta Lynch? What about President Obama? What about all these other meetings that he had as director? So we want to see if he's going to produce memos about one specific meeting that happened on January 27th at a dinner, then we actually would like to see all of them. So we want to see that. I think we need to ask Director Comey, why is it that you testified, I believe it was on May 3rd, in front of the Senate Judiciary, that there was no political influence that was being implemented here? And why then?
What do you think his answer will be?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he's going to contradict himself one direction or the other.
Can he say in that open forum, or do you think they'll get the answer in that private one?
Come on. That's what you're frustrated about, is that you're going to go to a classified situation here. But you can't testify. There's no political. He testified. There's no political influence. And the acting FBI director more recently testified he has seen no evidence of any political influence on this investigation. And I think that's a very difficult question to answer.
So I want to ask this question of Megan. Why do you think that they're doing both, a public and a private? And I mean, I understand like the protocol of it, but you, I know, have some thoughts about James Comey.
Well, I can't stand James Comey, and I haven't been able to stand him for a long time. I have very little faith there's going to be any really revelatory things that we all find out from this. As Judge Napolitano just showed, apparently this is all already scripted. My number one question, I want to know, if I were asking questions, I would say, all right, Mr. Comey, you were at the White House with President Trump, and he allegedly said, please stop investigating General Flynn, ease off this. When this happened, why didn't you alert the FBI? Hey, president's trying to put pressure on me illegally to stop this investigation. Why didn't you say something the moment it happened? Which is still my number one question. Was he just going to let this go forever and until he was actually fired? Then it becomes a problem?
Hold it back as a retaliatory move. Which
or maybe he wanted to protect the president in that instant, or protect at least the office.
Wouldn't he say that?
Protect the office.
Then if that's his answer,
then that gets complicated because it's political.
Well, but I'm just saying the other accusation that he was withholding it to use against him in the future is political. So I'm just responding.
That's CYA.
You know, like
Congressman?
If I could ask him one question, it actually wouldn't be about this. It would be when I, as the chairman of the Oversight Committee, and Bob Goodlatte, as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, sent you a letter wanting you to investigate Hillary Clinton. Did she lie under oath when she testified before Congress? We think the answer is yes. He never responded. First of all, he said he couldn't do an investigation, and they still have not come back to us. The FBI has to give us an answer to that, and I hope that the Trump administration will actually step up.
I
read yesterday that this is the hottest ticket inside the Beltway. That inside the Beltway, it actually has more heat around it in terms of people wanting to pay attention to it than the Monica Lewinsky scandal. So, I mean, this is something that really goes to the heart of
Where's the evidence? Okay, Democrats, I'm right here. Come tell us. What is your best piece of evidence? Because right now they don't have any. You have Senator Warner, the ranking member on the Senate Intelligence Committee, saying, I see no smoking gun. That's pretty clear at this point. They want it to be there, but I haven't seen any.
What if Director Comey wanted to produce, this is a technical question I think you could answer, what if Comey wanted to produce his notes? Doesn't the DOJ own them at this point? Meaning, the second he was fired and he's no longer part of the administration,
did he show them to the Washington
presumably come part
Post?
of the archives? They're probably classified.
I'm just saying,
could he even? Would that be a violation of the law if he was like, here are my notes, here they are?
Look, you can make your own diary entries, but I asked a very simple question: where are the documents? Are they at the Department of Justice? Or do you personally have them? And he would not answer that question, which begs a lot of raised eyebrows to say, really?
Like, I think it was the Post.
Are they federal records or not a federal
reporting? I may be wrong on that, but I'm curious to know if you showed it to any journalists. I mean, which would
the New York Times has clearly said they never actually saw them.
All right, we'll move on. Details on the first arrest for criminal leaks under the Trump administration, as our own One Lucky Guy had these words last night for anybody who leaks classified information. It's us quoting you, quoting you.
I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter what administration. When you have classified information, you cannot put that out there just because you think it would be a good idea. I want people in handcuffs, and I want to see people behind bars.
Well, an NSA contractor charged after allegedly leaking a top-secret report. Her name is reality winner, age 25, and she's accused of releasing a document that outlines the Russian military's attempts to target U.S. voting systems. It's the first such case under President Trump, who claims leaks are undermining his presidency. But Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano says what's in that leaked document actually bodes well for the administration.
This is obviously a serious crime. The Trump administration has been bedeviled by leaks, although this leak actually helps him, because if what she leaked is accurate, Russians are denying it, of course, it shows Russian efforts, independent of Trump, independent of the Trump campaign, to hack into American elections.
Meantime, Republican Senator Rand Paul says it's time to fix the problems in our intelligence agencies.
We cannot live in fear of our own intelligence community. So, yes, absolutely, from top to bottom, we need a reform, and we need to go in and say the American people need to have oversight of this, because we cannot let them listen to legislators' phone calls. We can't let them listen to the president's phone calls and blackmail the president.
All right, so we already heard how you feel about leakers leading into the break. Should this person be charged?
I mean, based on the fact pattern that we've seen in the media, yeah, that person should be charged and she should be sitting in jail for a very long time. If you want to be a quote-unquote whistleblower, there's a right way to do that, and you can approach Congress or go to a committee like the Oversight Committee. That's the appropriate way to do it. You have legal rights and you can actually protect yourself. But you cannot unilaterally, as a 25-year-old, decide that it's the best interest of the United States of America to release this information because you think so. Put
this in perspective for us. I mean, how big of a problem is this?
Oh, it's a big, we have far too many people that have far too many security clearances. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people with security clearances, and Rand Paul is right. There has to be some fundamental structural reform. I believe Mike Pompeo, for instance, who's now heading the CIA, is very engaged in making those efforts and helping us to change that framework. It's very difficult to change this big ship and move it in the right direction.
Yeah, so, it used to be every 5 years they take a look at those clearances, and so they're trying to shorten that time period up where they dig deeper on people who have clearances. This was an Air Force veteran, this young woman.
Yeah.
I mean, there would have been many levels along her short career, because she's only 25, but there would have been levels of, trust and protocol that she would have gone through. The fact that she would make this leap is really disturbing.
Yeah, I don't know all the facts of it. We have been begging and pleading with the administration, not only for people who want to come here on visas and get applications to come to their country, but also within the administration. If you're going to get a security clearance, check their social media. Do more of a background check. They're not doing that. They are not doing that.
So considering she is the first leaker to face criminal charges in the Trump era, Megyn, how does this change things this?
I don't know if it does change anything. We have set such a historical precedence, especially in the last election, that if you leak for the right political reasons, we're going to be okay with it. Look at Chelsea Manning, look at Julian Assange, and also look at WikiLeaks. And I think when we have set a precedence, I believe that all classified information is classified to keep America safe, and it's classified for a reason. But a lot of these people, especially on the left, have become folk heroes. I mean, I have a problem with it across the board, and I think there has to be some responsibility also on the media for elevating these people to folk hero levels. So when you see this 25-year-old girl who was, by the way, part of the resistance, wanting to leak, wanting to also become a folk hero, we have set a precedence that this will happen. Chelsea Manning is out and free to be with any of us. Julian Assange is doing interviews in Russia. WikiLeaks founder is going to, goes on, does interviews everywhere. So what precedence does it set for someone like that maybe she shouldn't leak any information?
Julian?
I agree 100%. I think that generally, as a matter of national security, these kinds of leaks are the #1 threat to our nation, period, today. Here at home, abroad, this endangers Americans everywhere in the world, not just here at home, not just on the right, not just on the left. I really hate the fact that leaking has become something that is now argued about as a political issue, because what the key thing we miss, the substantive part here, is that it creates a more dangerous space for all of us. It doesn't matter if today you like the content of what's leaked and you agree with it and it benefits your party. Tomorrow it doesn't, and so then you criticize it. I think it's a very slippery slope and a dangerous path, hence why there's a criminal law system in place that will attend to people like this and like Chelsea Manning. Hopefully, I think now, moving forward, President Trump will set a strong precedent with this. I would like to see him use somebody as an example, because I think that's the only way we can start to get a handle on this moving forward.
All right. Well, earlier in the hour, the congressman was talking about why Democrats keep losing. Well, can Democrats finally start winning? They're spending record amounts of cash on one special election later this month. But would a win be enough to help them flip House control next year? What Democrats need to do that they are not doing right now. Next.
With just 2 weeks to go before the special House election in Georgia, the pressure is on Democrats to start winning. Latest polls show Democrat Jon Ossoff and Republican Karen Handel in an absolute dead heat to replace Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price. But after losing 2 recent special elections in Kansas and Montana, Fox News' Juan Williams says to flip the House in 2018, Dems need a new message. He writes, quote, "The Democratic base is fired up. The party is definitely unified in its fury at the president. But are these hopeful signs just mirages, similar to the illusions that led Democrats to think Trump could never be elected president? Their message needs to go beyond another dose of fury at Trump and speak directly to voters." Congressman, I will start with you. The only message I see coming out of Democrats right now is, we hate Trump, he's the devil, and impeach him. That's it.
That's right. Juan Williams, I think, in essence, is right. But when he says they need a new message, a different message, they don't have a message. I mean, think back really quickly. Hillary Clinton for president. What was her message? You can't really even think of one. And as long as she continues to occupy...
No, hashtag I'm with her. But it doesn't make sense, because why would you talk about yourself in the third person? Go.
Well, look, she still occupies the screen. Nancy Pelosi is the one that still wants to be the Speaker of the House, and that does not attract the middle of America. And when you see all these rowdy town hall meetings and people yelling and screaming and protesting, guess what? Your average person who actually does show up and vote, they're not attracted to that. But that is what the Democratic Party has become.
I mean, now that we've got the unemployment rate in this country dropping to historical lows, the U.S. stock market, although down today, sitting at record highs. If it looks like that next year still, or even builds on it and improves, what is the Democrats' message going to be? Because apparently they're going to go out into the Midwest and all these rural areas and say that their message is jobs.
But, and look at what's occupying the televisions right now. Democrats are beating the drum saying, we need more people from Libya. We need more people from Syria coming to this country. And they're looking at Donald Trump, who says, I'm just trying to protect the United States of America. Guess what? Most of Americans look at that and relate to that and say, I want to be safe. I don't need more Libyans coming into my country.
Yeah, you know, that begs the question why the White House doesn't do a better job messaging with that. I mean, it doesn't have to be, as you said, it doesn't have to have the word ban in it. It needs to have some consistency, an immigration pause, whatever. I'm just curious to know why that isn't happening.
But look, you've got the mainstream media who wants to write one story.
Yeah, but they're not in charge
story.
of the messaging coming out of the White House, though.
No doubt. They could do some things a little bit differently, but at the same time, look at what's going to happen this week with James Comey's testimony on a document that's supposedly there that nobody's ever seen or read. And they are going nuts on this thing.
But I want to get Jillian into this. So Nomiki Kunst, who's a friend of mine, big Bernie supporter, she says you can't ignore these parts of the country in between elections and only invest in a couple of races. When you talk about the issues of facing working people and you do that only in between races, they're going to be attracted to your message. So basically saying you can't only focus on the John Ossoffs right now. It's a bigger messaging problem.
Well, I agree with that. And I would say, though, that this is not for Democrats or Republicans, but it would occur to me that during a midterm election type year, you actually do you need such a strong message? Meaning traditionally, if you look at the way the House and the Senate goes, the way that these races right after a presidential election year is that they pretty much are a referendum on the president and his policy. And so I think sometimes, I'm not saying that this is a good strategy and
I was going to say that's
what the Democrats should do, but I think that certainly less than a year ago,
I believe
now
historically in every election but Bush after 9/11, that's accurate.
But that's fine.
You know, all I'm saying is I think that the time for a new, big, exciting message and platform was like a year ago, not now for this election. Like, the ball was missed. I don't know why.
It's a sad reality to think they can stand there and not tell their voters what they're going to do for them or make any promise to those voters if they're elected into office.
All right. Well, the messaging is their problem. More Outnumbered in just a moment.